A state house watchdog says former state rep Harry Benton violated Illinois law through repeated incidents of sexual harassment. Tonight's House Democrats are split on how Speaker Welch has handled the complaints. Let's get to the point.
From Chicago's very own, with WGN political editor Tahman Bradley, this is The Point.
Good evening. A disgraced Democratic member of the Illinois House engaged in a pattern and practice of inappropriate sexual conduct. He did so almost as soon as he was sworn in. The revelations come from a Legislative Inspector General report made public today. Harry Benton resigned earlier this month after initial stories of his behavior surfaced in the Chicago Tribune. Legislative Inspector General Michael McCuskey spoke with 3 Benton victims. In April of 2023, a Benton District Office employee sent a lengthy email to Speaker Welch's Chief of Staff detailing sexual harassment by Benton. McCuskey reports Benton told the employee, "The reason I ran for office was to get away from my wife," and that Benton asked her during her job interview to be vulnerable. He also said to the woman, "Make sure you don't forget to wear something underneath that," referring to her clothes.
The initial pattern and practice of harassment and sexual harassment occurred almost immediately upon former Representative Harry Benton assuming office. Now, I think a couple of things would have transpired. I think had the initial reporting been treated in a different manner, we certainly could have interceded in a process through the LEC anyway, with different activities and different actions that hopefully would have stopped this next set of incidents from occurring.
Speaker Welch claims the report reaffirms confidence that his office acted responsibly. The report states the employee who complained to Welch's office in 2023 said she did not want to do more with the information. But Benton continued to act in a similar way for the next 3 years. According to a district director's complaint, Benton sexually harassed her at a Springfield bar. The woman says Benton approached her, leaned over her, and put his hand on her back. She reported the interaction, made her feel uneasy, and referred to Benton as creepy. In another complaint filed March 4th of this year and first reported by the Tribune, a registered lobbyist says Benton made lewd comments to her, saying, "You know, I might be a 5, but I blank like a 10. The lobbyist says she was shocked and disgusted. In an interview with the Inspector General, Benton denied saying or doing anything of a sexual nature. Back in February, after hearing about the incident with the lobbyist, Speaker Welch removed Benton from the Democratic caucus and his committee assignments. Democratic State Rep Kelly Cassidy says Welch's response has been insufficient. In a statement, she said, "The Speaker must demonstrate a sincere desire to repair the harm he has done and to correct the broken system in which we are all operating. To date, that has not been the spirit of his response." Could Welch's grip on the House be slipping? The Speaker still has his supporters. We spoke to 3 of them earlier today, and here's part of our conversation with State Reps Norma Hernandez, Lisa Davis, and Nicole Grassi. Speaker Welch's office knew about Benton's behavior in early 2023. His then Chief of Staff Zoomed with Benton. Bottom line, should Speaker Welch have done more to put a stop to what was going on with Benton in 2023?
I could start. I think he did what he could do in the power that he has in office now, given not actually having the proper process in place, because that's, I think, what's been revealed from this is the gaps that are needed to protect our district offices, because realizing that we are actually not direct employees to the Speaker, it is time for us to kind of figure out how we can create new systems and processes to protect our district offices, given what has happened with Representative Benton.
That initial information that came in 2023 was quite troubling. What makes you confident that the Speaker did what he should have done?
So first, let me just say I appreciate and I want to thank the LEC members for voting to release the report. I also want to thank the Legislative Inspector General for conducting a thorough investigation, a thorough independent, because I think that needs to be clear, investigation. I believe the report reveals that the Speaker's office acted responsibly. They acted appropriately in making sure that they were doing all that they were supposed to do, as well as supporting the complainant that came forward.
And I would like to share that this issue is so much bigger, and I'm glad you asked this question, but it's a complex issue because it's about protecting the victim. The victim did not want the issue to pursue further, but the data was taken, and it just shows where we need to do better with policies and procedures to help the victim and make sure that we can have what we need to do to hold those people accountable who are being accused of sexual harassment.
But the standard can't be that the victim doesn't want it to go further. The authority, the person in charge, would have a duty to act in this scenario, no?
Well, the duty in this instance, as the LIG report shows, that the Speaker's office did what they were supposed to do. They acted responsibly, and in fact, reaching out to the complainant initially, they initiated the contact with the complainant and urging her to file a complaint with the LIG's office, supporting her in that process if she wanted to do so, but also respecting her wishes to not do so at the time.
Speaker Welch took office with really questions about his treatment of women coming to light. I'll never forget in 2021, there were a group of women who huddled around him and talked to him for a very long time before they voted to elect him as Speaker. Why do you think your caucus was able to overcome those concerns about his past?
If I may speak to this, I think these are big questions, but I think we also are losing sight of our former colleague who had a pattern of sexual harassment that was confirmed to be true. And I think part of the documentation that came the first time, the first complainant came through, that documentation helped with the second allegation that came through. Going back to what happened when the Speaker was elected, I was not a part of that, but I do want to speak to the fact that we need to take care of victims and look at the way we protect those who are being sexually harassed. And I also want to speak that we all have done things in the past that maybe we wouldn't do again. Hopefully we've learned from it. So if we're all held to our worst events that we've ever done, that never gets us anywhere. I think the important piece is what we're learning from this, where the gaps are from what the first complaint, where that came, to the one now, and where we can do better to have a trauma-informed approach, to really look at the legal pieces and the trauma-informed pieces to protect victims and do better in protecting all of us.
Do you need new ethics rules?
So let me just say this, and I want to stress, at no time were any of these complainants members or on the Speaker's staff. They were on Representative Benton's staff. So I want to make sure that I stress, or that we stress, that the Speaker did not do anything wrong. And again, based on the report, the Speaker's office did everything that they should have done. And they
but they came to the Speaker's office. These concerns came to light. The Speaker's office was aware. Granted, they may not have been under him working in his office, but if you're the leader and you're aware of misconduct, don't you have a duty to do something about it?
Well, the duty also goes both ways. You have to make sure that you are supporting the complainant. And if the complainant does not choose to go forward, then at no time should a complainant's wishes should be undermined just to make sure that the head of the organization is crossing all T's and dotting all I's. Again, we want to make sure that victims feel comfortable coming forward in the future, not just now, but also in the future. And if they feel that their wishes are going to be overlooked, then that's going to be a problem.
Not mentioned in the report was some Tribune reporting about one of the complainants, a young woman who said she felt uncomfortable. The Speaker liked some of her pictures on social media. Republicans have seized on this. They cut a video showing the Speaker liking women in bikinis. What has the Speaker said to you about his social media activity?
Well, so let me speak to that directly. This is about the misconduct of Harry Benton, period. The LIG reports show a pattern of terrible hate behavior by Harry Benton, not Speaker Chris Welch.
So you have no issues then with the Speaker's social media activity, liking pictures of women in bikinis and stuff like that?
If you're asking me personally, I do not. If you go through my social media, you will see that I've liked, I've heart emoji, I have did the flame emoji, the whole 9 yards. If we are going to place scrutiny on social media likes and emojis, then I think we all will be found guilty of doing something quote unquote inappropriate.
Representative Grassi.
The Speaker has acknowledged that he has learned, and going forward, his social media will be differently. He will respond differently to that. And I think that's an opportunity for all of us to stop and reflect on our own social media behavior, what we're doing, how we're doing. As elected leaders, especially, we are held to a higher standard, and we need to have that time to always reflect and look at what we do, how we do it, and be held to a higher standard. So my hope and my understanding is the Speaker has already said his behavior will change, and my hope is that many of our other colleagues, including mine, will change also going forward.
Nicole Grassi, Lisa Davis, Norma Hernandez, State Representatives, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're back in 60 seconds. Tonight, a tip of the hat to Jerry Howard, a dear friend to all of us here at WGN, who died this week at the age of 78. Jerry worked at WGN for 42 years as a writer and an election returns guru. Jerry's last day on duty in our newsroom was back in January. Jerry was known for cheering on reporters when we did a good job. He'd send a nice note or walk over for a handshake. The world has lost a real good guy, and we wanted to tell you about him. And that is the point. I'm Tahman Bradley. There is more news ahead tonight at 9 o'clock. The Forecasters is up next on WGN+. Good night.